Really, this house is lovely. The sunlight is just perfect. Yeah, I can't wait to live here. Next to the smiling in-laws, my husband, Austin, is also nodding in satisfaction. We came to view our potential new home, but I hadn't expected it to be such a luxury property. As my in-laws and Austin carry on making decisions, my anxiety grows. Are we really going to buy this place? Seeing my confusion, the agent, Ms. Johnson, whispers to me, "Could you please come into this room? There's something about the contract we need to discuss." Led to another room. I was internally frightened. I thought I was going to be pressured into signing the contract. However, what Ms. Johnson said was completely unexpected. "Run away now." What? I was taken aback by her unexpected words and didn't understand what she meant. "Run away? What do you mean?" "I'm sorry for startling you all of a sudden, but I've seen something." Ms. Johnson started speaking in an uneasy manner. What she revealed was shocking. "My name is Samantha. I'm turning 32 this year. Austin is the same age. We don't have children yet, but have been discussing buying our own home. I've always dreamed of a condominium, but Austin prefers a single-family house. It's for Austin's parents. His mother, Diana, is 65. His father, Brian, is 66. They're relatively young for seniors. However, both in-laws are physically challenged. During a family trip when Austin was in high school, they were involved in a car accident. Fortunately, Austin was only slightly injured, but his parents suffered serious injuries. Though their lives weren't in danger, Diana injured her back, and Brian can't move one of his legs properly. As a result, both had to quit their jobs. After graduating high school, Austin has worked hard, supporting his parents through everything. We met through mutual friends when we were 26. My first impression of Austin was that he was a serious, family-oriented person. He always seemed overly concerned about his parents. But once I knew the circumstances, I began to understand and started to see him as a kind person. Our relationship naturally progressed, and eventually we got married. Given this background, Austin wishes to buy a house where we can comfortably live with his parents. Since Austin is an only child, and considering his parents' physical conditions, it seems like a natural decision. Yet, I've always felt something off about his parents, and my intuition wasn't wrong. Looking back, I felt this discomfort during our first family meeting 3 years ago. Nervously going to his parents' house, Diana welcomed us. "Welcome, Samantha. It's a small house, but make yourself comfortable." "Thank you, I will." Seeing Diana slowly bending and walking struck me hard. Even though I knew from Austin she had difficulty walking, it was still a shock. Ryan also appeared. "Nice to meet you, Samantha. Nice to meet you." Walking with a limp to protect his leg. The aftermath of the accident still affected them, making work difficult. But Austin said they were managing with insurance money. Seeing the in-laws, I was relieved I had bought sushi for lunch beforehand. Feeling sorry for them having to host us with their conditions, I had prepared it. Offering the sushi immediately, Diana exclaimed with joy, "Sorry for the trouble. Thank you. Let's eat right away." No sooner had she spoken than the in-laws began eating the sushi non-stop. Their fervor left me astonished. "Mom, you two starting without us? We're hungry too." Austin raised his voice. "Sorry, dear. It's been a while since we had such luxurious sushi. We just couldn't resist." We have food for you and Samantha, too. What Diana brought out to the table was, surprisingly, canned food meant for emergencies. Sorry, this is all we have, she said with a smile, with Brian also laughing. Mom, thanks. Austin spoke cheerfully, but noticing my stunned silence, he turned to me. Samantha, what's with that face? As I was unsure what to say. Right, we didn't have any drinks. Austin began to stand up. Here, I've poured some for everyone. Then, Brian came walking unsteadily with a tray holding glasses for everyone. Thanks, Dad. Brian, I'm sorry. Let me set them out. I was speechless as I took the tray from Brian. The glasses were in poor condition, some cracked. It was filled with water. I had just seen Brian filling them at the sink. Thank you. I could only mutter my thanks in a hoarse voice. In the end, the sushi we brought was almost entirely eaten by the in-laws. We had brought it to share with everyone. The two of them holding the sushi case, delicious, delicious, continued eating at an incredible pace, making it difficult for me to partake. Austin was eating the canned side dishes as if it were normal. Well, I wanted the sushi for Diana and the others, so it's okay. But the canned food was unexpected. Looking at the can I had in hand, I noticed it was nearing its expiration date. I pretended not to see it and quietly ate the side dish inside. I could hardly taste it. Seeing me silent, Diana asked with concern, "Did the simplicity of the meal upset you?" "No, not at all. Be honest. I heard from Austin that your family are well-known landowners. You must be used to much more lavish meals than we can provide. I'm sorry we can only offer such meager fare." At first, I thought they were being spiteful, but it seemed they were serious. I was even more lost for words. That's not. As I was flustered, Diana looked at me weakly. Sorry. As you might have heard from Austin, we have our physical limitations, right? We can't really go to the grocery store much. I'm sorry we can't entertain you properly. That's true. It's frustrating to think if only our bodies moved better. Brian nodded repeatedly. Faced with such remarks, I was left speechless. It's enough. Thank you. Indeed, as the in-laws said, they must have done their best to entertain us, considering their physical limitations. Living without working might have led to a simpler life, so maybe canned food and tap water can't be helped. However, having bought enough sushi for everyone, only for them to quickly eat it all themselves, it didn't sit well with me, but Austin was laughing, not seeming to find it strange, so I felt it wasn't my place to say anything. With unresolved feelings, we decided to leave the in-laws' house. Later, the topic of our wedding came up. I had been looking forward to it, but Austin came to me with a serious face to apologize. Sorry, my parents don't have any money, so they can't help with the wedding costs. That's okay. I was planning to use my savings anyway, so don't worry about it, I cheerfully replied. I had told my parents they didn't need to contribute either. I thought if only my parents contributed, it might make the in-laws feel guilty. So we had a simple ceremony. After some time, Diana called. Since they couldn't help with the wedding, they wanted to send us home appliances as a wedding gift, as a gesture. I tried to refuse, saying they didn't need to bother, but Diana insisted on sending them. A few days later, several large boxes arrived at our home. I was surprised. Diana and the others bought us so much. Grateful, I started to unwrap the tape. Inside were assortments of old home appliances, an old vacuum cleaner that wasn't sold in stores anymore, a microwave with peeling paint, and other used items that had clearly been in use for decades. I even found the cracked cups and dishes I had seen at the family meeting. Could all this have been from Diana's house? No way. I was at a loss for words. Mom and Dad, sending this is really nice. Austin seemed happy, prompting me to protest. Wait, Austin, aren't these the appliances Diana used at home? They're all damaged and in poor condition. This is too much. What are you saying? They're still usable, right? You should be grateful. I was dumbfounded by Austin's pleased expression, but since we received them, I had no choice but to thank them. Reluctantly, I called Diana. Thank you for the appliances. Have they already arrived? That was quick. Those were things we've used for a long time. They're filled with love, so we couldn't bear to throw them away. Maybe you could use them? You'll need appliances as newlyweds, right? Diana's cheerful speech only increased my unease. That's true, but some of them are damaged or don't work at all. We appreciate the thought, but we'll buy new ones. What a waste, buying new ones. You could save money, right? Save money. We would have liked to buy you new ones if we could, but, we have our physical limitations. It's hard for us to go to the store, so giving you things from our home was all we could do. If they didn't have the money, they didn't need to send anything. Moreover, Diana mentioned this to Austin, and I ended up being scolded by him. Samantha, you complained about the appliances to Mom? They went out of their way to send us stuff from their home for us. Don't waste their kindness. I didn't mean to. It made me seem like the bad one. Reluctantly, I ended up using the damaged appliances. It's such a shame for newlyweds. I couldn't help but feel dissatisfied. However, I had to swallow my feelings, convincing myself they did what they could, given their financial situation. Then, Austin suggested we buy a home. Of course, I've always dreamed of owning our home. It should have been happy news. According to Austin, he wanted to buy a house that could accommodate living with his parents in the future. I was hesitant. Though I wanted to get along, the behavior of the in-laws to date left me feeling unsettled. I started wondering if living together was really a good idea. The sending of damaged appliances showed they disliked spending money. Initially, I thought they were trying to help in their way, but that started to seem dubious, especially when I visited their house for some reason later and found all the appliances had been replaced with new ones. This raised questions in my mind. Weren't they supposed to be short on money? They had said they couldn't go to stores because of their mobility issues. But on reflection, these days, one can buy products online without needing to go to a store. It made me think they just wanted to get rid of their old, unwanted appliances under the guise of a wedding gift. I couldn't say this to Austin, though. Anyway, I was worried that living together would force us into a frugal lifestyle. Besides, knowing the in-laws, a new construction seemed unlikely. I feared they would push for an old, damaged property just because it was cheap. Despite my worries, surprisingly, the in-laws were interested in a solid house. Or rather, they already had a rough idea of the property. It seems you've already made quite a bit of progress. Confused, Austin responded as if it were obvious. I took Mom and them to see some houses on my day off. There's this really nice new house they liked. You didn't tell me about this. I felt left out and upset. They were making decisions about our future home without me. Feeling unsatisfied, I decided to go see the property myself. Austin, the in-laws, and I visited the real estate company. Then the person in charge came right away. Soon, a young, cute woman approached us. Her business card read Johnson. "Nice to meet you. My name is Johnson, and I'll be assisting you." Ms. Johnson greeted us politely. She took us out in her car to view the property. In the car, the in-laws were chatting amiably with Ms. Johnson. It appears the new construction is in a high-end area. I had a bad feeling about this. After a while, we arrived at the property. It was a detached house with a large garden, looking quite luxurious. Such a grand house must be expensive. We went inside and checked the layout in the living room. The in-laws were engrossed in a cheerful chat. "Really, this house is lovely. The sunlight is just perfect. Yeah, I can't wait to live here." Feeling anxious as the conversation progressed, I couldn't help but interject. "Excuse me, this is my first time here, but—" "Oh, right. My apologies. Here is the brochure." I was surprised when I saw the brochure for the property. The asking price was clearly over our budget. Surely this house wasn't suitable for us. Yet the in-laws and Austin acted as if this property was meant for them. Sweating nervously and confused, I caught Ms. Johnson's intense gaze. She seemed like she wanted to say something. While glancing at the brochure, I pondered what to do. Eventually, the in-laws wandered off towards the terrace. Austin moved to assist them. They seemed absorbed in their conversation. Then Ms. Johnson looked at me with determination and whispered, "Could you please come to this room? There's something about the contract we need to discuss." Surprised by Ms. Johnson's serious expression, I nodded instinctively. Led to another room, I was internally frightened. Was I going to be pressured to sign something immediately? However, what Ms. Johnson said next was entirely unexpected. "Run away now." What? Taken aback by her unexpected words, I didn't understand what she meant. "Run away? What do you mean?" "I'm sorry for startling you suddenly, but I've seen something." Ms. Johnson began speaking in an unsettled manner. Austin and the in-laws had been visiting this property before. According to Ms. Johnson, during those visits, the in-laws were walking without canes or assistance. What? What do you mean? But my in-laws are supposed to be physically limited. I couldn't believe it. The in-laws I had always seen struggled to walk. They were supposedly unable to work or go to the grocery store because of it. Could it be? I managed to mutter something. "Do you want to see for yourself?" Peeking through a slight opening, Ms. Johnson made in the door, I surreptitiously watched the three of them. Indeed, the in-laws were walking. Of course, without any canes or assistance. Why? Could they walk normally all this time, pretending to be physically impaired? For what purpose? It might be a good idea to take a video as evidence. Ms. Johnson's calm voice echoed in my head. Evidence? What kind of evidence? I'll explain later. As directed by Ms. Johnson, I pulled out my cell phone in a daze and recorded a video of the in-laws. I was utterly stunned. I had no idea what was happening. Ms. Johnson explained that at first she suggested a barrier-free home because the in-laws seem to have bad legs. This property is equipped with a ramp, which might make moving around easier. However, Diana laughed it off. "We don't need anything like that. Saying this, Diana and the others walked away. Ms. Johnson didn't understand why they pretended to have bad legs. The mystery was soon solved when handing over the mortgage documents to the eager-to-buy in-laws. It seemed the contract was progressing under my name. Here are the documents you filled out. Looking at the documents she handed over, my name was indeed written on them. Eavesdropping on their conversation, Ms. Johnson heard a horrifying discussion. Having Samantha pay for the loan is best. We've received quite a bit from the insurance company by pretending my back and Brian's leg were bad. But we've spent a lot on new appliances recently. Mom, that's too direct. But that's what we've been saying for years, right? Find someone wealthy. Diana said this matter-of-factly, with Brian seemingly agreeing. Austin kept his promise. Samantha completely trusts us. Rich people who don't suspect others are easy to manipulate. Realizing the truth left me dumbfounded. The in-laws pretended to have mobility issues to defraud the insurance, and Austin was aware of it. Hearing about the exchange from Ms. Johnson left me speechless. They expected me to pay for the mortgage? Unbelievable. Indeed, my family owns some land, and I had mentioned to Austin early on that we were landowners. But our lifestyle is very modest. I've always been taught by my parents not to waste money, and I don't own any luxury items. I'm just an ordinary office worker with no high salary. I never imagined Austin approached me with the motive of targeting the fact that I'm a landowner for money. I was so shocked I couldn't say anything, to which Ms. Johnson apologized. I'm sorry for bringing this up so suddenly. No, please don't worry, Ms. Johnson. I'm actually glad you told me. I managed to say, forcing the words out, and Ms. Johnson's face fell. There's more to the story. Then Ms. Johnson revealed something shocking. Austin had said, "We'll need Samantha's cooperation going forward." Said. And Diana had suggested, "Yes, next time, give Samantha a little push. Say she fell and claim treatment costs indefinitely. Teach her that, and she'll be delighted to join us, getting money just for a bit of pain." She said this with a malicious smile. I felt terrified. They were planning to involve me in fraud. What is that? A little push means they're fully intent on injuring me, and they want me involved in their deceit. Impossible. I know this is a difficult conversation. Maybe it was unnecessary, but I felt I had to tell you. This is a serious crime, and I feared for your safety. Ms. Johnson spoke hesitantly, her words echoing deep within me. It was hard to believe, and I didn't want to, but I had seen it with my own eyes. The in-laws walking normally. My name on the mortgage documents. And Austin, who had been deceiving me. Dizzy with the magnitude of what had happened, I stumbled. "Are you all right?" Miss Johnson caught me as I nearly fell. "Right. I need to be strong." The person in charge had courageously informed me. I needed to take action. "Thank you. I'm okay. It's a shock, but I don't want to be involved in fraud. And now that I know the truth, I can't let the in-laws continue like this," I said firmly. Ms. Johnson nodded with conviction, understanding my resolve. There was no time to waste. Ms. Johnson and I quickly discussed what to do next. Then I rushed out through another door. The in-laws were kept busy by Ms. Johnson. I texted Austin that I was feeling unwell and would go home first. Taking this opportunity, I decided to gather evidence at home. I remembered seeing some records about the in-laws' accident. Using the internet, I searched for the date and details of the accident, relying on my memory to find the insurance company and doctor's names. Once prepared, I immediately reported to the insurance company. When I mentioned it was a case of fraudulent claims, they directed me to a specialized department where I shared the details. Of course, I also sent the video I took today via text. Subsequently, the insurance company filed criminal charges, and the in-laws were arrested. I later found out that while the accident and injuries were real, they weren't severe. Despite this, they continued to pretend their conditions were serious to swindle money, and they had been defrauding money. However, with traffic accidents, insurance companies are usually on high alert for false claims. I wondered how they managed to deceive the investigations, but the mystery was solved. They had conspired with a relative who was a doctor to forge medical certificates. Despite only having minor injuries, they pretended they were severe. Such an unbelievable story. Of course, the doctor was arrested too. This doctor, who had engaged in similar frauds apart from my in-laws, was already marked by the insurance company. That's why they were able to arrest him so quickly. In the end, they were just a greedy family. Not just stingy, but outright criminals. Austin, who had turned a blind eye, was no different. I told everything and expressed my desire for a divorce. However, Austin wouldn't accept it and resisted. "Meet with Mom at least. It's all a misunderstanding," Austin said. I couldn't understand what was misunderstood. I didn't want to see them, but I had things I wanted to say too. Austin and I went to the prison where the in-laws were, due to the severity of their crimes. They didn't get probation. Upon entering the visitation room, Diana looked completely defeated. Through the acrylic panel, I glared at Diana. "Diana, I heard you've been committing fraud and even planned to involve me. Why did you do such things?" Diana spoke in a feeble voice. "Such things. The accident was real, and we did have leg problems. But once we got better, if we could still get paid as medical expenses, why not take it?" Was she unaware that she committed a crime? Astonished, I spoke clearly. "What are you saying? That's a crime. And to think you planned to involve me in your deceit. You're insane." Then Austin intervened. "That's how easy money comes, Samantha. We just messed up this time. You must understand, living off your family's money." Austin's flippant attitude made my anger explode. "Don't lump me in with you. My parents and I work hard. I would never earn money by committing crimes. You're the lowest of the low. I want nothing to do with you ever again." After my outburst, Austin and Diana were stunned by my stern attitude. Diana and Austin were more terrible than I had imagined, having finally shown their true colors. They only thought about living easily and extracting money from others. Even after arrest, they hadn't woken up to their actions. Realizing the conversation was futile, I left Austin at the prison. I wouldn't come back here again. Later, I filed for divorce. It took time, but the divorce was finalized. Austin, notorious in his company for his parents' arrest, resigned due to the discomfort. His whereabouts afterward are unknown. Presumably, he lives modestly with the released in-laws. Never had I imagined such despicable people existed. I had enough of marriage for a while. Deciding to focus on my career, I found a new job. Then, unexpectedly, I met someone. I met a kind man, Scott, who accepted everything about me. Scott understood and healed me when I was hurt and had gone through tough times. However, I was hesitant about moving to the next stage. I trusted him because he was a really good person, but I had become cautious due to the lessons from my previous marriage. To dispel my anxieties, Scott introduced me to his parents. They welcomed me and entertained me with a proper meal. I was moved by such a normal act. His parents were also of a gentle nature and very open-hearted, just like Scott. With this family, I felt safe. Thinking so, I married Scott. Finally, I was able to have the peaceful life I had always wanted. As time went by, the conversation about buying a house with Scott came up. I mentioned that there was a real estate agency I wanted to go to and took Scott there. It was Ms. Johnson's real estate agency. Thanks to Ms. Johnson, who handled our case, we were able to realize we had been deceived. I couldn't be more grateful for that. Upon entering the real estate agency, a familiar face caught my eye. "Welcome." Ms. Johnson seemed to have recognized me. I greeted her with a smile. "Hello. It's been a while." It seems Ms. Johnson is doing well. The new business card she gave me had Chief written on it. Seeing that she had grown and accumulated experience made me feel happy. Ms. Johnson, taking a moment when Scott was away, smiled and said, "It's great that you found a good person." Smiled and said, "Thanks to you telling me the truth that time, Ms. Johnson. Thank you." I smiled back, influenced by her warmth. Thinking of what I could do for Ms. Johnson as a token of gratitude, I decided, let's buy a house here. This time, it will surely be a wonderful home. Thinking of my new home made me naturally smile.
Someone old like you who can't even have kids properly are useless. That's what my husband Thomas spat out as he shoved the divorce papers at me. Gloating with a smug smile, my sister Catherine rubbed her slightly bulging belly. It hurt. It felt empty. I despised the world where Catherine, who lived by taking other people's men, seemed to be rewarded more than someone like me who lived earnestly. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to live like Catherine. Instead, I chose to live a sincere and solid life, and one day, a miraculous turning point came my way. I am Alicia, a 32-year-old working in administration at a small company. My hobbies are reading and saving money, and I prefer very simple, clean-looking clothes and makeup. I'm the type who likes to use good things for a long time. Thomas proposed to me, calling me solid and wonderful. He worked in sales at a client of my company, and we got close after finding out we were the same age during our meetings. Thomas is tall and not bad-looking, but having attended an all-boys school and worked in a male-dominated field, he wasn't used to women, and I was apparently his first girlfriend. Though inexperienced, I liked his sincere personality that treasured me. Our marriage was smooth at first. However, things took a turn for the worse when I didn't get pregnant even after a year. Taking a bold step, I went to a gynecologist, and there was nothing particularly wrong with me. I suggested Thomas also visit the hospital. But I'm a man, so. But he dodged it with an unclear excuse. Perhaps he had his male pride. But if there was a problem with him that could be treated, I wanted us to work on it together. If not, we could still live together, but if there was a chance, I wanted a child with Thomas. Despite my repeated pleas, Thomas was non-committal and seemed unwilling to see a doctor. One day, my sister Catherine, 3 years younger than me and who was married 5 years ago, returned to our parents' house. Catherine got pregnant at 24 with a 20-year-old college student, clashed with our parents who were against the marriage, and moved in with her partner's family. After not showing her face for 5 years, it seems she divorced, leaving her child with the father. The in-laws harassed me, and it was tough, so I came back. I wanted to raise my son, but my husband's parents took him. She cried to Mom, but the truth was unknown. After all, Catherine has always been good at fake crying and drawing sympathy. Unlike plain me, Catherine has a glamorous appearance, always wearing fashionable clothes. She has lived a life always with a man by her side. When bored with a boyfriend, she would villainize him to gain sympathy from the next target man and switch to him. So, I assumed this time too, it involved a man. And normally Mom would see through Catherine's lies. But perhaps because it was her daughter returning after a long time, or maybe because we lost Dad last year and she was vulnerable, Mom was swayed this time. Well, she's family, so it can't be helped. I kept silent and endured it too. But this decision turned out to be the worst, only to realize it was irrevocable later on. During a usual summer vacation visit with Thomas, Catherine was naturally there. Catherine, who didn't attend our wedding, was meeting my husband for the first time. Relaxing in a camisole and shorts, the inexperienced Thomas took a step back at the sight of a young woman. But upon seeing Thomas's face, Catherine's eyes lit up. Wow, Sis's husband is handsome. Huh? We were both stunned. Indeed, thinking back, Thomas might have the same type of face as Catherine's past boyfriends. Nice to meet you, I'm Catherine, your sister-in-law. Looking forward to getting along, Thomas. Oh. Called by his name in a sweet voice, Thomas blushed and looked away. During the meal, Catherine, for some reason, sat next to Thomas, talking to him with a smile and frequently touching his arm or knee. Mom, unable to watch anymore, scolded Catherine. I'm just happy to have a brother. But she seemed unfazed. Thomas, blushing deeply, looked to me for help. Reluctantly, we decided to cancel our stay and began preparing to leave. Then Catherine whispered in my ear, Sis, you've caught a good man. It creeped me out. In the car on the way home, Thomas, looking exhausted, said, Your sister is something. To which, I'm really sorry. I replied. At that moment, I realized Catherine had taken a liking to Thomas, but I thought nothing would happen seeing the reaction of Thomas. But for Catherine, accustomed to men, seducing Thomas, who was inexperienced with women, must have been easy. By next spring, Thomas, with his arm around Catherine's shoulder, declared, Catherine is the one I love, so please let's divorce. Naturally, I was shaken to the core. How could you think that's okay? Even if you don't forgive me, the fact that I no longer love you doesn't change. Why? I'm sorry, sis. But I realized the moment I first met him. Thomas was my destiny. Catherine. Forced to watch the two of them gaze into each other's eyes, I couldn't help but feel angry. Catherine, how could you? Hey, don't lay a hand on Catherine. She's carrying my child. What? Thomas's child? Despite our 2 years of trying? Really? Catherine is pregnant with Thomas's child? Staring at Catherine's belly involuntarily, she smirked triumphantly. That's right. It seems like Sis had decided Thomas was infertile, but I got pregnant with his child easily. No, that's a lie. Thomas looked down on me as if I were trash. Turns out you were the only defective one. Blaming Thomas even though you're the flawed one, how pathetic. Poor Thomas. Catherine leaned on Thomas, who tenderly stroked her hair. To say such things. I just wanted a child with you, that's why I wanted you to go to the hospital. That was just pressure. Not just about the baby. You always talk about saving and expenses for old age, forcing a life that reeks of poverty. I was fed up with not being able to spend freely like when I was single. Life with you was plain and boring, nothing fun about it. Thomas's harsh words deeply wounded me. You were the one who said you loved the solid me. Compared to that, Catherine embraced me gently. That's why she got pregnant with my child. That's not fair. I didn't mean to blame him. I would have accepted him even if he couldn't have children. I just wanted him to get tested at the hospital once. Was I wrong? Is that why the child went to Catherine's belly instead? My head spun, and darkness closed in. My own sister stole my husband and carried the child I couldn't have. The reality was too heavy to even start blaming them. Laughing at me, Thomas placed the completed divorce papers on the desk. If you've understood your mistake and where you stand, please sign this quickly. Don't worry, I'll pay the compensation as dictated by the divorce court. After all, I'm abandoning a pitiful old woman who couldn't bear children. Thomas is so kind. Their voices faded away. Crushed by despair, they disappeared soon after leaving me with the divorce papers. It took me days to regain my senses, but eventually, I complied with their wishes and agreed to the divorce. I could have refused, being the victim, but I couldn't bear to make an innocent child illegitimate. Instead, I secured fair compensation through a divorce court with the help of a lawyer. Thomas paid without hesitation, all at once. It hurt to be told he wanted to pay to get rid of me. Hearing about my divorce and Catherine's affair, Mom seemed even more shocked than I was. She better not step foot in this house again. Was I wrong? Is that why the child went to Catherine's belly? And I'm sorry. It's because I accepted her. Mom apologized, crying, and I hugged her back, crying too. It was frustrating. It felt empty. I hated the world where Catherine, who lived by taking other people's men, seemed to be rewarded more than someone like me who lived earnestly. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to live like Catherine, and even after the divorce, I continued to live a plain and solid life. Then, a turning point came my way. One holiday, while reading a book at my favorite cafe. Is that you? Alicia? I was approached by a familiar voice. Looking up, I saw a familiar face. Derek? It is you. Long time no see. Derek smiled happily. My classmate and childhood friend. Though we used to play together often as kids, we became estranged after going to different schools for further studies. The conversation flowed so naturally with Derek, it was hard to believe it had been so long since we'd last met, and I learned he had also divorced and returned to his hometown. His ex-wife had been irresponsible with money, leading to a discovery of significant debt and their subsequent divorce. When I shared my story of divorcing due to my ex-husband's affair with my sister, he was as outraged as if it had been his own, which made me happy. It turned out Derek also liked to read books in cafes, and we found we had a lot in common. We started seeing each other more frequently and naturally began a relationship. Convinced by each other's sensible way of living, we felt certain about our future together. I told him I might not be able to have children, but he smiled and said we would live a happy life together regardless, making me want to spend my lifetime with him. 2 years after our reunion, we got married in Hawaii, just the two of us. 3 years later, I was relaxing at home with Mom when the doorbell rang. Catherine and my ex-husband, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, let themselves in with a key. Upon seeing me, they sneered in disdain. Sis, you're as plain as ever. And you're not even wearing makeup. You look even older, it's hilarious. To think you're still alive despite being infertile. Aren't you ashamed as a woman? I can't believe this. I replied disinterestedly to their typical insults, too bothered to engage. Instead, Mom glared at them. I told you never to enter this house again. Oh, Mom. Are you still holding on to that grudge? If you keep this up, you'll never see your grandchildren. That's fine. You'll regret it. Once you see my adorable daughter, you won't be able to say that. Rosalind, come here. Catherine confidently called to the entrance, and a 5-year-old girl approached. She looked a lot like Catherine, bright but silent, just observing us. She's cute, isn't she? Your first granddaughter. Yes, she's a lovely child. You must regret it now, right? Choosing Sis over me. But it's okay, I forgive you. Just kick out that divorced, infertile woman, and we'll live with you. You'll get to take care of your granddaughter every day. Wouldn't that be happy? Mom watched Catherine, who was only talking about what suited her, expressionlessly. And when Catherine stopped to breathe, Mom sighed. I understand what you're saying. But it's impossible for me to live with you. Why be so stubborn? If you sympathize with Sis, you'll never be able to adore your grandchild. Catherine laughed, and Thomas sneered beside her, looking down on me. Then, a cat-like cry came from somewhere. Huh? Mom, did you start keeping a cat? Catherine was astonished. Mom quietly raised her arm, pointing to the next room. Look there. What? Instead of the astonished Catherine, I opened the door to the room Mom pointed at. Inside, there was a child sleeping on the bed and 2 babies crying. Who? Whose children are these? My grandchildren. Huh? Mom's grandchildren? What do you mean? What else? If they're not your kids, then they must be Alicia's, obviously. What? Catherine and her husband's exclamations echoed. Their voices made the 2 younger children cry even more, so Mom and I took turns holding them. Seeing their incredulous faces, I decided to explain my current situation. I got remarried 2 years ago. Even though you're infertile? Thomas still said something foolish as I held a baby. You can see the kids right here, so it's clear I'm not infertile, right? We started trying for a baby right away, and it happened so quickly. And the second time, I had twins, which was quite the ordeal. Is that so? Thomas forced a smile, clearly feeling awkward after discarding me as defective. While Mom soothed the baby with her gentle hands, she sternly told them, So, we're not short on grandchildren. In fact, we're so busy we could use an extra pair of hands. Sis may have married and left home, but she brings the grandkids over like this, so there's no benefit to living with you. Ugh. Catherine choked up. But she quickly recovered and insisted. That's terrible, Mom. Are you discriminating against your grandkids? You've made your bed. How much have you given to Sis's kids? You didn't give anything to mine. You've made your bed. Thomas's parents are trying to disown us too. Don't you feel sorry for us? Help us. You've made your bed. Ugh. No matter how much Catherine tried to cry and plead, Mom was unmoved. It seems Catherine and Thomas had been abandoned by Thomas's family as well, and were in financial trouble. Whatever they did, there was no way they betrayed me, and Mom would lend a hand. At that moment, another visitor appeared from the entrance. Hello. Oh, do we have guests? My husband Derek, who had gone out to buy diapers, entered. Seeing Derek, Catherine's face turned bright red and she exclaimed, Derek! Ah, Catherine. You know each other? Catherine reacted like a smitten girl, causing Thomas to look a bit panicked. But Catherine, without sparing Thomas a glance, hastily adjusted her hair and shyly asked Derek, "Why is Derek here?" "Why?" "Because I'm at my wife and children's home." "What?" "I married your sister." "What?" Catherine let out a voice of despair. No wonder. Derek was also Catherine's childhood friend, the object of her first love from a young age. Even Catherine, adept at manipulating men, reverted to a shy, innocent girl in front of Derek. She used to get upset and lash out at me or flirt with men whenever Derek got a girlfriend. Seeing her first love married to her plain sister, with children no less, must have driven her over the edge. "But, Derek, you were married, right? Don't tell me Sis seduced you." "Of course not." "Catherine, that's something you would do, not her." "What?" Catherine's face drained of color under Derek's cold gaze. "Catherine, I heard you even had a child to try and steal Alicia's husband." "I'm disappointed." "No. I've always heard rumors about you playing around with men, but I never believed them. You were like a cute little sister to me." "But it was true, huh?" "I'm disappointed." "No, it's not like that. It's not. Please leave. This house is important to me too. If you do anything to my wife or children, I'll never forgive you." Catherine trembled under the scorn of her admired one. "This is wrong, all wrong. Lies, lies, lies." "Catherine?" "Lies, lies, lies." Seeing Catherine muttering with unfocused eyes, Thomas also turned pale. "Now you see. I'm not infertile, and Catherine has always been known to mess around with men." "Ah. You chose such a woman. Take responsibility and take her back." "Yeah." Thomas, stunned, dragged away the babbling Catherine. Rosalind, left behind by her own parents, was delivered by me to Thomas's parents. They are decent people. When Catherine and Thomas had their child, they criticized them severely but supported Catherine and her husband's life, acknowledging that the incoming child was innocent. Being on the verge of disownment by such people suggests Catherine and her husband's behavior must have been particularly egregious. Seeing her grandparents, Rosalind's face lit up and she hugged them. Relieved by their embrace, I returned home to my husband and children. Afterward, Catherine locked herself in her room for a while, then went on a rampage, lashing out at Thomas. With no money, disowned by both his own and his in-laws' families, and facing his wife's unreasonable treatment at home. Not to mention her rampant affairs, and his supposedly infertile ex-wife now having 3 children. Suspecting something amiss, he secretly conducted a DNA test with Rosalind. The results confirmed Rosalind was indeed Thomas's child, without a doubt. The inability to have children with me might have been due to compatibility. However, when Catherine realized that Thomas had conducted a DNA test, she exploded even more. Their marriage deteriorated beyond repair, leading Thomas to divorce her, taking Rosalind with him. Thomas apologized to his parents, who allowed him to return for Rosalind's sake. I hope Rosalind grows up happy under the care of her loving grandparents. Meanwhile, Catherine, a former housewife without savings, desperately sought the next person to rely on. She was lured by a man she met on an app into a profit-making scheme and ended up assisting in a fraud. When the man was charged with fraud, Catherine, having been involved, was arrested as well. A prison full of women, without a man in sight, must have been hellish for Catherine. The thought of her possibly receiving a prison sentence, despite being my sister, fills me with pity. 6 months later. On a weekend night, I sneak out of bed, leaving the children sleeping soundly, and head to the living room. My husband places a cocoa with marshmallows on the table, and we sit down on the sofa we carefully chose together. We quietly raise our mugs with a soft cheers so as not to wake the children, savoring the rich sweetness and the warmth spreading through our palms. While I'm immersed in this comfort, my husband has already opened a new book by his favorite author, diving into a world of imagination. I pick up a book I've been looking forward to reading and eagerly turn to the first page. Catherine and Thomas might laugh at this as being plain, but what others say doesn't matter to me. In this peaceful space, spending time reading with my husband, my greatest ally, while our precious children sleep contentedly from a day well spent, is the ultimate bliss for me.